Be careful what you say or tweet on social media because you don't know when it could come back and cancel you. Are we seeking to allow growth through accountability, or are we simply imposing our points of view by public shaming? I'm Nina, and I'm your host of Anti-Cancel Culture.
Good evening, good evening. We are excited to have you all here for episode 3 of Anti-Cancel Culture. I am excited for this evening. Of course, every episode is the best episode, right? Till the next episode. Thank you for joining us again here. Today, we are talking about marriage, singlehood, relationships. Whew. It can be a whole lot. And our guest tonight is Natasha Stovall, who is a community educator focusing on family and building community through the work that she does with families and couples alike. To date, Natasha has reached more than 40,000 people all across the Metro DC area. And through 10 regional marketing campaigns, she does community outreach. She facilitates family-focused workshops for more than 400 organizations. The sister is about her business. Without further ado, we're going to introduce you all to Natasha Stovall, our guest tonight on Anti-Cancel Culture. Hello, gorgeous. It's so beautiful to see you. It's so wonderful to see your beautiful face. Always radiant. Thank you for joining us tonight.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very, very much. As I mentioned, you really have found importance in building up communities through families, right? This is something that is very, very near to your heart. And you know, what exactly makes up a family these days, right? There are some people who are choosing to remain single. And there are some people who are excited to be married and determined to stay in it for the long haul, right? Yeah. So where do you, as a young lady, where do you see yourself in all of this and in this conversation?
Well, Nina, like you said, I have been in this community and family building game for a long time. Mm-hmm. And it's all around, for me, believing that at the foundation of healthy nations is the family. And so for me, because I believe in that so much, I have really dedicated my career to that. So for me, I am a single woman. I'm not married. But I believe in family. I believe in family.
Very good. Very good. Well, then let's start right off. Is it necessary to cancel our relationships with single friends once we do get married? As a single woman, do you still have friends, right? Should married and singles not fraternize, right?
I have to say, like, that's probably one of my biggest thorns. It's like hearing that narrative that once you get married, you cannot have any single friends.
Right.
And I do feel like that's something that was pushed really hard as I was becoming a young lady in my 20s. I can't tell you how many times I've heard like a man say, "Don't talk to your single friend. She ain't got no man.
She can't tell you nothing, right?"
Bring you down, you know. I mean, that is a very common narrative. But I have to say, like, I am one of the only unmarried women in like my circles of friends. So I'm very fortunate that I have seen my friends go from unmarried to engaged to married to having children. And they have stuck by my side. I've stuck by their side. It has not broken our relationships.
That's good. That's good. And one thing that you mentioned is that, you know, we hear it a lot from men, right? That you're not supposed to be friends. You don't need to be with your homegirls out in the streets, whatever the case may be, right? As if we don't have anything to gain from those relationships or from those perspectives, right? Do men have these conversations with one another? In your experience, how do they hold one another accountable as a single man to a married man or vice versa?
That's actually a really good question. Like, as I'm thinking about that, I'm kind of sifting through like the men I know. Let's just say this, like in general, I will say men don't tend to have as many social circles as women do.
True.
So I think men just naturally have like a bit of like a lone wolf type of like
Okay.
way of living, and they may have their boys, but you know, they may contact their boys like once a month, or
Right.
they may connect with them, you know. So I say that to say that it's possible that maybe for some men,
Mhm.
the influence of their boys is
Mhm.
different than how women are influenced, because with women you tend to talk to your girls every
Right.
day, like maybe not the same girlfriend every day, but you're gonna talk to one of your girls
Right.
at least once a day, maybe like 20 times a day, right? So with that, like there's like a really great opportunity to influence. But to your question, I have to say, as a woman, I have not heard a lot of men
Mhm.
say to other men, "Oh, you can't hang out with your single boys anymore. You're married." I
Mhm.
mean, again, I'm the woman, so I'm on the outside. So, you know, who knows what happens in that inner circle conversation.
Right. You know, it's funny you make that point, because one thing that we're going to get back to the village and the importance of wise counsel and all of the things, right, for married and single folks. But you make a good point that you're a woman on the outside looking in. Right. So a lot of what we deal with, and this is where the idea of cancel culture comes in, into conversation, is that we have these experts, these cyber experts, right? These men who are constantly, I don't want to say constantly, I need to be careful, who often have advice for women, right? We can all think like a man, right? And those types of ideas. So do those experts and those perspectives have a place in building a healthy relationship and healthy relationships and then communities?
Mm.
Mm.
Nina, let me tell you, about 2 years ago, I decided to take the whole year and be very intentional about listening,
Mm.
courageous conversations, in particular with men. Because to your point, like I do notice there is a growing population of some people call it men's rights, red pill, MGTOW. There's this growing population of men who are like, forget marriage. We
Yeah.
don't, marriage is not for men in today's society. We
Mm.
don't get married. And when I first heard that, I was so shocked that I couldn't help but listen.
Right.
And I took a year just to like kind of like say less and
Right.
more. And I have to say, like for me, as a woman who really does want to learn, I have found it valuable to hear those perspectives, even though I may have a totally different value system, belief system around families and marriage, even though I still believe in the covenant of marriage, while some others are like, nope, keep the government out, don't.
Right.
I have found it very helpful simply because I believe that sometimes in our society we don't hear men as often as we should.
Right.
And if there's a growing trend of men who are moving away from marriage, I think we need to pay attention to that.
That's a really good point. That is a really good point. And I know one thing, so this leads me to, okay, if they're not in marriages, or if these gentlemen are moving away from the covenant of marriage, right, and monogamy, if you will, then do they have any weight on the advice that they give? Do they have, and this even leads me, you can speak to this as well, when it comes to people who are divorced, right? I've heard a lot of times people say, well, what could he possibly have to say? He done been married 2-3 times. Well, in my experience, my father was married. He's on wife number 4. Now they've been married for 25 years. They're doing fine. But I can look at that relationship in all his past relationships and say, okay, don't do that. Don't do, we learn from others' experiences, right?
Absolutely.
And so do we cancel people or disregard the opinions and the perspectives of people who are divorced, or men or women who are not married and have no intention of getting married, if our goal is in fact to be joined in wed?
Yeah, I think it's, for me, I'm going to listen. Right. My old pastor used to say, chew the meat, spit out the bones.
Exactly. That's good.
Enjoy the fat too.
Yeah.
So for me, I choose to, but I'm also like, my lens is that I'm here to like hear the narrative and understand other perspectives. I don't listen for them to influence my decisions.
Gotcha.
Or my value systems, because it's possible we have different value systems. But to your point, Nina, I have many people in my family who have been married more than once, more than twice. Right. And like you said, like I don't look at them as someone who I can't take advice from or wisdom from. I mean, even me, I'm an unmarried woman, and I have a lot of married friends, and every now and then they will come to me and ask for my opinion. I am a woman who doesn't have children yet, and I counsel families and parents all the time.
Good point. Very good point.
So for me, I have, in my early 20s, I completely cut off that whole idea that if you haven't done something, you can't share wisdom, because that's just not true. A lot of the people who we study and read from and learn and hold as like the greats in our society, they have not done some of the things or lived some of the things that we actually like look to for wisdom. I mean, even in psychology, most of the theorists around like understanding marriage, and some of them have never had families.
Right.
You know?
Because they've been busy doing the research, right? They've had their head in everyone else's business, trying to figure it all out for the rest of us, right? To give us something to go off.
They probably got scared, maybe a little bit.
Right, exactly. They're like, I know better. And so this leads us back to, it takes a village. I've recently heard, conversations around people. We talk a good game, the African proverbs, but where is the village? Where is the village? So where are people getting wise counsel from? How can we encourage people to not give up on marriage if that is your goal, or even considering marriage and considering a relationship that you can move forward and build with? Where do people go for wise counsel in their singlehood and as husbands and wives?
So I'm a Christian, and when I think about marriage was the first thing that God instituted. It's something that God loves and values, and I do believe that moving forward, our culture will begin to really look at marriage as an optional or even a foolish thing to do because of the law system. So I believe for those who actually do want to get married, I think that we're going to have to consider looking to the one who created marriage and seek God for guidance and wisdom and understanding. Because the way we're doing marriage and just relationships in general, in my opinion, is completely flawed. It's very self-focused. It's really not village-oriented, right? For thousands of years, marriage was about joining families together to accomplish a greater good, or joining nations together. Like a marriage could have been like a treaty for nations. So when you think about it like that, and you consider like that village aspect, you're going to fight differently. You're going to have conversations differently. You're going to think twice about leaving the house angry if you understand there's a whole village to this, versus it's just me and my man. We don't have to tell anyone our business. We don't get any input from anyone else. It's just us, and we're in it. And if it fails, it fails. It's a very different approach.
That is really good. And so I think what we've come up with, right, what we're able to agree on is the fact that, whether or not people decide to get married or not, we should not cancel out the ideas and the perspectives of those who may not live up to our standard of what marriage is, right? Who may not have the experience that we expect them to have, and that it will take each of us doing our own part in basically really doing the work around our own expectations in relationships in general. Like you said, it's even beyond marriage. There's so much that we can learn and do and work that can be done to help us in our relationships in general, right? So I like to say on behalf of us all, y'all don't cancel it out. Don't cancel out marriage. And single folk, take that time to really do the work. Natasha, do you have anything that you'd like to add while we're preparing for audience questions?
I was actually sharing with Nina before the show that a large part of my life's work has been supporting families and communities and breaking poverty cycles. And going back to that village point, we know from research and many years of wisdom that one of the best ways to break poverty cycles is to invest in families and for people to get married.
Right.
So I think with this whole conversation around marriage, I think it's really valuable to look at it from a legacy and a generational standpoint, and not just, do I want to be single and live that single life forever?
Right, right.
But that's something that I'm always chewing on, is how can we make the world better for the next generation?
That's really good. And I do have a question that someone dropped to me when it comes to, and hopefully this doesn't take us too far away, but when it comes to married couples, as a single woman, I am married. I've been married for 12 years, but as a single woman, have you ever heard or been discouraged by married people to not get married? Girl, don't get married, honey, because when you do, we've heard men call it the old ball and chain, right? So how do we encourage people who may be on the fence about where exactly they want to go in their relationships without discouraging them along their journey?
Yeah, so early in my faith walk, when I was a young Christian, I remember wanting to connect with like older women who were married, so I can, learn how to love my husband and children like Titus 2. And I will never forget, I was volunteering with this older woman, and she had been married for like 20 some years. And I'm like, oh, I'm ready for this wisdom. And I'll never forget, she looked at me and she said, "You are so lucky. You are so lucky that you're not married." And she just went on. Every time I would see her, we would volunteer together often. Every time I would see her, she would always say, you could just do whatever you want. And you're so lucky. I wish I could have that.
Yikes.
And I remember being like, okay.
Thank you. I think
we're gonna volunteer together. We can talk about some stuff, but I will not be getting wisdom from you.
Oh my word. That's so hard.
So I do think it's when you talk about like married friends, single friends, and like the commingling of that, it's all about like picking who influences you. We have a choice.
Right.
We have a choice. We don't have to sit and eat from people whose values and beliefs are totally contradictory to ours. So, I do find it helpful when people share their experiences without projecting their experiences. And I will say that over the years, I've seen less of the, are you sure you want to get married? And more of the, here are some things to consider.
Right.
Get married. Here are some questions. Here are things that I would have done differently. And I really appreciate that.
You hear that, married folks? Get your heart right. Get your spirit right. Because y'all out here discouraging folks, okay? And we don't want that. Give it some without the bitterness, right? Give it with some honey. Bless their hearts. Well, and I try to keep that in mind as well when things may get a little frustrating in this walk, right? Okay, let's see what we have here. I believe we do have some audience questions. Yeah. I know there are people they've been single for 14 years and it's been discouraged. It is real. It's really real. And this is why in all the things that we do, it's really important to make sure that, like she said, make sure that you're mindful and using discernment when it comes to who you seek wisdom or advice from in general. Someone says, how does social media play a role in displays of toxic marriage? Yikes. What do you got for that? I have my own. What do you think? How does social media play a role, Natasha? If you have.
Mm-hmm. You know, what I've been seeing this year is less about social media playing a toxic role in displaying marriage and more about social media playing a toxic role in displaying like relationships.
Yeah.
So what I see circulate a lot are like, posts from Twitter and, maybe it's a woman who's very self-centered, selfish, or maybe it's like a woman who like actually says, I only go on dates to get free meals, and I will see, you do see like those things circulate, and the poster might say like, this is why you don't get in relationships.
Right.
Why you don't get married. Because if you get married, you're going to get totally wiped out. And the thing, you're going to get totally wiped out in custody courts. And I've seen that narrative play out. It's more of like the fear-based, don't even try. Don't even do it. I see that more than what I see than around like, the display of marriage.
Right, the drama. Right. The drama online. And I know in many cases, I tell people often, social media it's only magnifying who we already are, right? Or pieces of who we are. So that is something to consider as well. What are things that make married couples more open to fostering friendships with singles? We need each other. Again, what are things that'll make married couples more open to fostering friendships with singles?
I had a married colleague. She openly said that for a period of her life, she would not talk or interact with women in her church unless they got engaged or married. And she told me this because she noticed it as a problem and she corrected. So I think part of what married couples can do is realize that we do need each other. There is benefit in having a village. Like I tell women who are maybe embarking on motherhood, like before you get pregnant, think about your village. Who do you want around your children? Who can you call on to bring you food or to sit with your baby? And if you're completely cutting out single people, you're cutting out a lot of support, because guess who has time? You do.
Right.
Time, right? Like your married friends are in the same boat as you. They may not have time.
Yeah.
So you may want to have a night out with your boo, and you're going to need us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, indeed.
We all benefit from that. Like everyone benefits when you choose well. So I think part of it is kind of zoning out of that, like it's just me and my man, and really remembering like, no, it takes a whole society to raise a healthy child.
It really does.
To raise a healthy family. So you really can't do it without us. I mean, you can try, but
right. And I love the people who, try to tell me, because we don't have children yet. And so I get a lot of that too, and I've kind of been walking on eggshells around people who do have children and giving my input because I don't, right? But like you said, we have a whole perspective when they need someone, when dad's at work or mom's at work and they need someone to come pick up, then they know that Auntie Neen will be, I'm available, right? I can give insight to maybe a dust up between, father and son or mother and daughter or whatever the case may be that they can't see because they're in it, right? And it's the same way with those relationships. It's important for us to, everyone to play their part, everyone to play their role, and find people, really find people, whether you're a parent, a single person, or a married couple, find those people that you can trust to hear your heart, to grow with you. That is always a goal in anti-cancel culture. We want to provide the grace that it's going to take to apply the lessons that we've learned. Even if those lessons were learned through the experiences of someone else. Amen.
Amen.
Because look, they say experience is the best teacher, but we don't have to experience everything ourselves.
And that's wisdom. Wisdom is learning the lesson without having to live it.
That is good. I wish, let me write that down real quick because that's perfect. I need to put it right up here. Thank you so much, Natasha. It's been such a pleasure. Shannon, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your questions. For the other individuals here that provided questions, we thank you so much. Natasha, again, Natasha Stonewall, ladies and gentlemen, please check out Good News Co. on Instagram, and you can find her there and find more of us. Anti-cancel culture. We've got a long ways to go, but we're doing some great work here. And so again, thank you for your insight, your expertise. And until next time, this is Nina Bruton. We will be back here October 22nd. As a matter of fact, we have a special episode for you all next week. So by all means, check us out on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube, and thank you for your insight, your expertise. And until next time, this is Nina Bruton. We will be back here October 22nd. As a matter of fact, we have a special episode for you all next week. So by all means, check us out on Instagram, on Facebook, and on YouTube, and we'll see you next time. Peace.